artificially, basically prohibited inflation from occurring by pressing interest rates to almost zero. And again, they've never done this before. When have you ever seen money worth nothing? But we're at 0.28 basis points right now, which is the lowest I can think it's ever been, probably since the 1800s, when we didn't have the Federal Reserve. Now here's the other problem. Since 2008, the Fed began paying interest rates on its own money in its own banks that it just printed. Now why would that be a problem? Well, it wouldn't be a problem, but the whole point of printing money is to jumpstart the business cycle. And as that money flows out through the Federal Reserve banks into the economy, it heats up the economy, and the economy basically starts to heat up and grow. Inflation rises, but so do dollars and everything else. They're prohibiting it from happening because all but about 15% of this money is still in the Federal Reserve banks. Hasn't gone into the economy. Never happened before have they ever done this. Since 1913, they've never paid interest on their own banks. And since they're paying 1% interest, but the securities are only valued at 0.28%, they're not going to loan this money. They're making more money keeping it in the bank than they would loaning it out. So they've created another, basically a fault line. In essence, the Fed has electronically created money that exists only in its Federal Reserve banks. Doesn't exist in the economy, which is a problem. And then such a policy could lead to a run on these deposits and a dramatic rise in inflation all of a sudden, which could obviously lead to what we would call a monetary collapse. Our dollar could devalue so quickly, and it's already devaluing pretty quickly. In 2004, our dollar was about 0.88 to the euro. Today it's 53 cents. Now why is the government doing this, or why is Mr. Obama doing this? Well, number one, if you devalue the dollar by 50%, you pay off your debt at 50 cents on the dollar. You starting to get it? He wants to pay off our debt, this $15 trillion, at 50 cents on the dollar, and that's what he's trying to do. So the International Monetary Fund and China don't like that. They've already called for replacement of the dollar as the reserve currency in the world. Now, will that occur? I think they've got a ways to go. Here's the danger of hyperinflation. Everybody remembers this guy. You've heard this, probably seen it. This guy looks a little German, doesn't he? But could we be the next Weimar Republic? This guy's going to buy a loaf of bread, and so he has to take an entire wheelbarrow full of money down to the grocery store to buy a loaf of bread. People say, well, it's dangerous carrying all that money. Someone could knock him in the head and dump the money and take the wheelbarrow. Basically, the wheelbarrow is worth more money than the money itself. But there is the problem. But look at the similarities, folks. And tell me if you think this is 1925, 26, and 27 in the Weimar Republic. Look at the similarities to our own economy. First of all, no currency backing by bullion. Sound familiar? That's us since 1971. Number two, excess currency printing. We're printing so much we're running out of paper. We're killing more trees than we should even be killing. Number three, devaluation of the dollar. Starting to sound even more familiar. Number four, excess government borrowing. Yeah, that's us as well. And then finally, out of control government spending. All five of these things happened in 25, 26, and 27 in the Weimar Republic. And they had inflation of 1 to 2% a month. That's what was occurring. 24% a year by the end of the cycle. And it could very well happen to us. Talk about some positives now that I've made you upset. Federal Reserve Transparency Act. This is a bill that has been out there to basically bring the Federal Reserve under control. It's been authored by a certain guy. Anybody know who it is? Ron Paul. I'll give you an example. He's running for president. His name is Ron Paul. He's authored this bill the last 5 cycles. And he's, of course, from Texas. Most folks know that. But it would create an audit of the Federal Reserve and its policies and powers. I mean, the bank itself is not the issue. It's the policies and powers that are the problem. The bill was killed when the Democrats had control of the House by who? Barney the Purple Dinosaur, right? Yeah, he's our favorite friend. He's not running. Unfortunately, we're losing Ron Paul too, so we're going to lose both of them. The bill was killed this year by Harry Reid in the Senate, and obviously we're hoping to make him the minority leader in the Senate, right? Federal government spending. Get off the Federal Reserve for a minute and just talk about spending in general. 2 types of government spending. First one is mandatory spending. Now, very important here. This has to be spent by law, okay? You have to spend the money on this by law. But here's the more important part. We have to pay the interest on the debt. We don't pay the interest on the debt, what happens? We default. So we can't default, so we've got to pay the interest on the debt. We're going to get to a number here that's pretty important. Discretionary, unfortunately, discretionary spending has to receive an annual authorization. Guess where they put our military spending, veterans? Under discretionary. That's so they can get the Republicans to vote for it. But that's a problem. Here's our total budget. Not quite $4 trillion this year, it'll be just about that much. Mandatory is about $2.5 trillion. Discretionary, not quite $1.5 trillion. But here's the number we've been working towards this whole time. $242 billion. That's the interest on our debt. Now that's a low number, believe it or not. That number would be a lot higher if what? Interest rates were higher. Now you see the play on the Federal Reserve. They have artificially pressed our interest to almost nothing so they could spend more money. And that's what this whole charade has been about, is doing that so they could control our monetary policy, so they could control the interest on our debt. What happens if our interest goes back to normal? What if it goes back to 4 or 5%? Well, I'll give you an example. We go back to 5%, this number goes to $1 trillion. Oops, there went all your discretionary spending. What if it goes to 6? What if it goes to 7? We have a hyperinflationary cycle. That could occur in 6 months. So this is our danger zone. And that's the one that we really need to be concerned about, because that could happen before I take office. I'm assuming I'm lucky enough to get elected. So that could actually be here by this time next year. Net interest on spending will more than triple in the next decade. Now this assumes it goes to 4%, goes to about $800 million. But look at this, guys. I mean, if it's about $200 billion for every 1% goes up. That's a lot of money. Gets to 6%, it's $1.2 trillion. There goes all your discretionary spending. Who owns our debt? Most folks know this one. No, everybody thinks it's China, but we actually owe most of the money to ourselves. China actually does not think we're a good investment anymore. This, and they may be right, this number is 19.4%. 5 years ago it was 23%. They have been divesting themselves of American securities for quite some time, which is why the Federal Reserve is buying them to create an artificial market. If they were not buying our own debt, it would have devalued even more. So that's the problem. Well, we actually owe most of the money to ourselves or to our seniors, unfortunately. What are we spending our money on? This is where I ask you to reach under the table and pull out your barf bag. Now, this is going to make some of you very upset, but remember the super committee could not find $1.6 trillion in deficit reduction over 10 years. This is why that should make you mad. But let's look at some numbers. Some of these came out of Pork Report, some came out of Tom Cover's Back in Black, some I just found. But earmarks by members of Congress. Now this is money you give to your congressman like Dan Boren to go out and get himself reelected. That's the only thing I can say that's positive about it. I mean, really, it's that bad. A year ago, it was $50 billion. This year, they've got a ban on earmarks, so it's only $20 billion. I guess that's, congressional math, right? But it's still $20 billion. You know what Dan Boren spent money on? He bought the city of Roland 3 police cars that cost $200,000. Now, isn't that a local issue? Does Okemah have to buy their own through, sales tax or something like that, or property tax? I don't know what you use, but obviously sales tax. Why did he go get them and he didn't bring you a police car? I think you need to write your cars.
He brought us a road.
Oh, okay. Well, there's another thing. So, but anyway, I just think we need to do it for the congressional earmark. The problem is we get 2 or 3 police cars, and Alaska gets the $2 billion bridge to nowhere. We always get rinky-dink out of these deals. And I think if we just raised our own money, then send it to Washington, and have the handling charge taken off, we'd do a lot better. Here's those earned income tax welfare payments, $40 billion. This is someone else getting your refund. Just remember that. I'm sure it was well spent. U.S. Department of Education. This one just drives a stake in my heart because, first of all, I graduated in 1980. We didn't have a U.S. Department of Education. It actually passed, and its first year in effect was fall of 1980, so I was already out of school. But here's what I want to make you more sick. 10 years ago, this number was $33 billion. It has more than doubled in size while we've been in a financial crisis. Imagine what's going to happen.